October 19th, 2022. Well, I want to take a look at the situation with the election, given that we're less than 3 weeks away from Election Day, and of course, early voting is available in many locations. Um, Basically, I start off by kind of looking at the generic average, which is basically tracking the congressional situation, but in the House. But it also, I think, gives a general layout that would affect Senate and governor's races and others on kind of how people are feeling. And right now, the Republicans are up 2.2%. We've been trending up lately from the month or so back where the Democrats were slightly ahead. And a lot of the recent polls are trending kind of in our direction. I think more. The latest Rasmussen was up 7, Trafalgar up 5, and I think a series of those that are pretty good. And However, there is one registered voter poll in the group of 10, and I throw that out because it's not the others are all likely voter, which is what we're really looking at now, and that would increase the average to 2.9%, nearly 3% advantage for Republicans. So we're finally getting back into a pretty good performance again. Probably again, what probably is driving this is the fact that the stock market has declined considerably. And gasoline prices have trended upward lately as well. And so a lot of the things that were kind of being favorable to Democrats in the summer are kind of gone away. I think the abortion issue that has also faded a little bit because, well, basically the pro-abortion people who were upset with the decision of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade have now come to the understanding that it isn't going to affect the situation in their state for the most part. And in the states where there is a likelihood that abortion will be restricted or banned, those are more red states where pro-life is a much stronger sentiment there anyhow. So I think that the impact of that decision is now not as significant as the economic factors and perhaps the illegal immigration and just the general, I think, poor performance of this Biden administration, who remains at a pretty low approval rating of somewhere in the low to mid 40s. Okay, so that kind of gives us a pretty good outlook for the Republicans taking the House. The Senate is a bit more competitive, and we'll kind of get to that in a second. By the way, if you like these videos, please indicate by giving me a like. If you haven't subscribed, if you're on Google, you can go ahead and subscribe. And of course, any comments are appreciated. Yeah. So the Senate is much more competitive. And of course, recently we've had some significant Senate debates that were televised. And of course, we don't know exactly what the outcome of them. A lot of them, some of them kind of had a setup situation. For instance, Senator Johnson in Wisconsin, I think, it was at a university debate, which was kind of set up with people, bad questions and people trying to boo him and stuff there. We'll see what kind of impact, if anything, that has. Before this, he was clearly leading in the polls there. Looks good. And we'll see if that had any big impact. We had a debate in Ohio there, Vance versus Ryan. And of course, that was pretty testy. Depending on who you listen to, you can debate who came out on top. I tend to think Vance did pretty good, but we'll have to see. Again, we don't have any polling post-debate yet. And that one remains fairly close. One shocking poll, was the Des Moines Register poll, showed that Grassley was only three points ahead of his Democrat opponent, and that seems to be really weirdly tight with both of them below 50. I don't know. We'll have to see about that. That seems surprising and rather unusual. So hopefully that is just sort of a fluke poll, although traditionally that particular newspaper, although I'm generally pretty negative on newspaper polls, but they generally have a good reputation historically. But I don't, again, the details of what's going on there. Otherwise, I thought he was doing pretty good and was, pretty much a shoe-in. Another race that's like that's kind of interesting is the Lee versus McMullen race in Utah, which there's newspaper polls that's showing Lee about 5 points ahead, both again below 50%. And you got this Mullen, who's kind of a flaky candidate, who is basically being highly supportive of Democrats, and he was claiming that he won't caucus with either party and won't take any committee assignments, which means basically what use is he really? Why would you want to vote for that to be your state senate, your U.S. senator? I mean, represent your state. It just seems absurd. But at any rate, again, that's got certainly people a little concerned, I think. It may be analogous to the Smiley race, and I think it's in Washington, I think it is, where you have a situation where you have a strong Republican candidate and a very strong Democrat state, which is also kind of, she's actually doing a little bit closer in some of the polls. So, there's always a possibility with all the, the crime in Seattle and all the, the rioting and stuff, maybe will bring out a kind of an independent reaction in favor of the Republican, which usually wouldn't be the case there. But we don't know yet. See, the thing is, both sides have situations that could look to be a long shot. I'm surprised at the number of races where both candidates are below 40%. Excuse me, below 50%, in the 40s is what I mean to say, and are narrowly separated. In states where I would tend to think it would be very likely that the incumbent would win, pretty clearly. And that's kind of a surprising development. And we'll have to see what that really means, of course, on Election Day when we finally get some results here. But overall, I think it's positive for the Republicans to win the House pretty strongly and probably do okay, maybe take the Senate. It's, a lot of this kind of leads in these toss-up races that you kind of, and it's just hard to know. Some of these states are always kind of close, like Wisconsin and Florida, for instance, even though they tend to, well, certainly Florida tends toward Republicans, so, but it still tends to always be a pretty competitive vote there. And Georgia, another one, the latest poll after the Herschel Walker debate with Warnock, the latest poll has come out showing him tied. So perhaps Herschel has actually recovered from the whole issue that came up a couple of weeks ago. We can hope so. And so that's another one that's kind of interesting. And we can, I think one thing that favors him there is that Kemp is leading Abrams pretty strongly, I think. They just had a debate too. And so I think that in some of those states, also like in Ohio, DeWine is way ahead of his Democratic opponent. And so I tend to think that may help, tip the closer Senate races across the line to victory. At least we can hope. So that's kind of my basic rundown on the situation. I thought my last time I kind of did this, I was kind of positive. I think it looks more positive now than it did before. And so we'll just have to kind of make sure you vote. You can still make a last-minute contribution to the candidate of your choice if you have the funds and if you see the need to do so. I always tend to favor, if you don't have a key race in your own area, to give to the national committees, the Senate Republican Committee and the House Republican House Committee. Those are two committees, that basically come in and provide add support in areas where they're needed, when you don't know when something's going to pop up at the last minute that might, you need a little bit of reinforcement, all these last minute surprises and stuff. And whereas if in your own state, I guess, or district, support your own candidate if it's competitive. I think mine, I don't believe, is competitive in terms of the House, and I don't have a Senate where I am. So, but when you do, I tend to. Anyway, well, that's my opinion on that. Otherwise, I guess we're. I understand that Biden made a big speech on Tuesday about on the abortion issue. Again, hidden in that little speech is something more than abortion. It's ending the filibuster and ramrodding a lot more liberal stuff through after that. So I mean, So I continue to emphasize that the basic constitutional system that we've known as it's covered by both law and tradition, because remember, there's a lot of tradition in the system, is really at stake. And if that happens with the Democrats in control of the Congress and the presidency, we're going to see radical change in this country in a leftward direction. So that's why this is a very important election to go the extra step in. Make sure you vote if nothing else, and try to get your friends to vote if they're Republican. If they're Democrat, tell them just relax. No. Anyway, so at any rate, I'll be also post this as always on Rumble, and of course links to the addresses, excuse me, of my social media accounts are below in the description below, and we'll wrap this up for now, and until next time.